Welcome everyone to Wrasslin Raw!
You're listening to Wrasslin Raw, the podcast that takes you back to when the World Wrestling Federation developed a little bit of an attitude. Thank you for joining us. You're here with Ryan Arico.
I give my personal guarantee that Friar Ferguson and Bastion Booger will appear live on Wrasslin Raw next week in Hershey, Pennsylvania. I promise you that.
Talk about a 1-2 punch. Joe Giammatteo.
I hope you guys like the word bombshell, because it will be used 15 times in the first 12 minutes. I counted.
I'm the one and only Jason Bartlett, and we're going to examine WWE history, one episode of Raw at a time. In this episode of Wrasslin Raw, we're going to be talking about the Raw that aired on September 16th, 1996. This Raw was recorded at the Wheeling Civic Center in Wheeling, West Virginia, and features Kevin Kelly, Jim Ross, and Jerry the King Lawler on commentary. Are you guys ready?
I'm ready.
Ready.
All right, then, let's get into it. One of these four superstars will be the next Intercontinental Champion. Owen Hart, Mark Marrow, Psycho Sid, who just happens to be a mercurial mesomorph, and Farouk get brief video packages describing their various states of greatness. Tonight, they're claiming here to have word about the upcoming return of Big Daddy Cool Diesel and the bad guy Razor Ramon. Jim Ross says it's happening. Gorilla Monsoon is present to address these claims. We'll get footage from South Africa, where Bret Hart has apparently lost his commitment to the WWF, and that takes us into show opener, and then things go straight down the shitter as we head into our first match of the night. The Sultan, with Bob Backlund and the Iron Sheik, defeat Jake the Snake Roberts by submission in 3 minutes and 4 seconds. The first thing that happens here is that Jake Roberts goes after Jerry Lawler and makes a fuss about something nobody gives a shit about. The second thing that happens here is that Bob Backlund joins commentary for this match. Jesus Christ. And then the third thing that happens is that the Sultan makes his debut. What a way to follow these two things here. The Iron Sheik is there in the ring disrobing the Sultan. And for the record, the Sultan won't ever be speaking or taking his mask off. He can't speak because his tongue has been cut out, and if he hadn't had his tongue cut out, he might just have a voice that sounds like Fatu. And he won't ever take that mask off because he might just have a face that looks just like Fatu. The lockups at the start of this don't look too bad. Jake was actually working fairly quickly with Fatu. I'm sorry, I mean the Sultan. However, Jake interacting with Jerry Lawler remained a theme throughout this match. Jake and Jerry trade words over at the ropes every time it's available, to the detriment of this overall 3 minute and 4 second match. Before long, we got to the finish here, and let me tell you that this is one of the most piss poor things I've ever seen. Jake stumbles around while the Sultan stands there and watches. Jake yells over to Lawler for no reason, and then we can't see exactly who throws it, but I'm assuming it's Jerry Lawler, that's confirmed later on by some of the commentary, throws a minibar bottle of alcohol because Jake, standing there waiting for it, tries to catch it and drops it, but acts indignant at the same time. This is where the Sultan grabs Jake, throws Jake into the corner. The Sultan gives Jake a really weak-looking knee to the back, which causes Jake to fall down on his hands and knees. And then as the Sultan steps over Jake to begin to administer the camel clutch, Jake just goes ahead and wraps his arms around the Sultan's legs while the Sultan was doing some kind of gestures to call for the submission, even though the submission had already started by Jake just blatantly putting himself into position for it. This was just fucking terrible. As I said, that's the camel clutch and the end of the match. We go to split screen with Bob Backlund, who makes zero effort to engage with commentary and instead just stares off into space. Thank Christ we got video footage of that. Guys, it's been a while since we've seen not just a match, but also a debut that can be labeled as the absolute drizzling shits. But here we are. Joe, what did you think of our show opener here?
First off, the Sultan's music is fucking horrible. It was like a blues rock song with a sitar mixed in there. This didn't do anybody any favors.
No.
I mean, the Sultan is this new character we're seeing. It's almost like they could have done like a Street Fighter kind of thing with him, which is maybe what they were going for. But I mean, to have him go against Jake the Snake, why? I mean, put him up against the Pug or some other jobber, and that would maybe do him a little favor. But I mean, we know Fatu's a decent wrestler. I mean, it's maybe something that could have worked, but then we get Bob Backlund on commentary. We got the Iron Sheik out there with him. Of course, he uses the camel clutch as his finisher. The whole thing with the airport bottle was just ridiculous. So yeah, this was the drizzling shits.
Absolutely. Right from the get-go, Jake comes down, immediately goes for Jerry the King Lawler, and it tries to further this ridiculous feud that they have had with each other that seems like it's been stretching on for months now at this time, right? I mean, I don't know the exact time, but it's been a really long time. And then if things couldn't get any worse, we get Bob Backlund comes down to commentary, and Bartlett, you forgot to ask, but he talked, so that's a negative.
That's the thing, is I was waiting to see what you said about it, because he really didn't talk a lot. He said a couple words, but he stayed mostly silent.
He said enough, not to mention took up a lot of our viewing time, so it's a negative. Then we see Rikishi, the Sultan. Even JR points out that this large figure looks familiar. But Fatu did not look terrible. Jake did, especially at the end with the camel clutch when he prematurely camel clutched himself. That was a little bit odd. Not to mention that, like you pointed out, every single free moment that Jake the Snake had, he was jawing with Jerry the King Lawler, right up to the end, where Lawler distracts him with a mini bottle of alcohol somehow, and that's enough for the Sultan to get the victory here. So, yeah, piss poor debut, piss poor management, and piss poor match.
Yeah. It was almost like Jake called for the bottle. Like, Jake was just so fucking impatient to get the hell out of the ring and wind up behind a dumpster somewhere. He prematurely called for the bottle. Give it to me! He prematurely went for the camel clutch. My God. Pin me, pay me.
Yeah.
Well, let's move it now. Backstage, we're going to be back there with Brian Pillman and Owen Hart. Pillman was very excited about the upcoming announcement by Bret Hart at the upcoming Mind Games pay-per-view. Owen Hart was also excited, as the whole family has been reconciled now. But then Stone Cold Steve Austin sticks his head in, which doesn't surprise Owen or Pillman. Austin says he's going to get his answers from Bret because Stone Cold is the best there is. Pillman said something to Owen as Austin was leaving that I wasn't able to understand. Maybe one of you guys had it. But the show moves along from there. Before we move along, though, there's a new twist to this ongoing Pillman thing with the Hart brothers. I mean, I can't speak for anybody else, but I've been snowed by it. I've been waiting for them to get together and form some kind of stable or something. And the introduction of Stone Cold Steve Austin here is both unexpected from my point of view and a taint teaser from my point of view. Joe, what did you think of this new level of confidence and power coming from this setup?
I think that the Stone Cold and Bret Hart stuff, I definitely remember that. But this stuff with Pillman and Owen, I don't really remember. So I'm interested to see where this is going with Brian Pillman and Owen Hart. I know it's not going to be the formation of what we know is going to happen later, but it might be the start of it.
The one thing that kind of threw me off here is the other times we've seen Pillman talk about this, he was trying to build up his credibility, where this time the way Owen and Pillman were acting, especially with Stone Cold joining in, it's starting to appear that they may not be very genuine in their talking about Bret Hart. That's just the way it's starting to come off now.
Maybe we need Jim Ross to apologize for for them lying about promises they can't keep.
So misleading, all of it. It's going to screw up some kind of negotiation, I'm sure. Well, we're going to leave Owen and Pillman to go straight into our next match. Bob Holly and Alex the Pug Porteau defeat the Smoking Guns with Sonny by pinfall in a 5-minute and 52-second non-tag team title match. Sonny was scantily clad here as usual, and this episode of Raw was brought to us, by the way, by Tekken 2. What a great video game.
Absolutely.
I was very happy to see that. Heihachi needs only his fists.
I think the Sultan was a character on that game.
Man, I sunk some quarters into that game.
Hell yeah. Sonny gets on the mic again to display yet another large canvas over the ring bearing her image. I'm not sure what the point of that is. I'm sure you guys please throw your 2 cents in on this, but is it possible for Sonny to get any more over than she is right now? And is this canvas really helping at all? I don't think it is.
I could only assume that this giant canvas poster wasn't cheap, so they just want to get their money's worth. You know, I wonder how many times they dropped this thing at house shows. It was probably countless.
Yeah.
I can defend this one a little bit because the last one was the first time we saw it, and that was on a pay-per-view. So...
Okay.
For those of us that were maybe not watching the pay-per-views, this is the first time we would see it on TV.
Okay. That's a fair point. Thank you, Joe.
But if we keep seeing it, then it's like, okay, what the hell?
Well, it seemed like there wasn't much of a reaction there in the crowd. I don't know.
Half the audience probably can't even see it.
Yeah,
that's
right. True. Very true. Well, from there we go to split screen with Gorilla Monsoon. And while we are still talking about that, the image shifts to Bret Hart. What a clusterfuck of a little sequence this was here, shifting between these different views. Finally, we settle on the match, and it was great to see Bob Holly and Billy Gunn at the start here. It was just a nice reminder that Bob Holly both exists and can work pretty well. You know, I've always been a fan of Bob Holly, and it's just good to see him here again. But then things go even more off the rails as Jim Cornette, the British Bulldog, and Owen Hart come down to the ring. This is where Jim Ross announces that Razor Ramon and Diesel will be on Monday Night Raw next week. And it's all I can do to keep up with my notes addressing all of the shit going on outside of the ring. The work in the ring is barely a side note in this entire segment, between Cornette and Camp Cornette on the one side, commentary on the other. Everybody's going in different directions all at the same time. It was very hard to pay attention to any one thing. Camp Cornette was heckling the Guns from ringside while Bart was working the Pug. I loved the close camera view of the Pug missing the hot tag to Bob Holly, but everyone except Jerry Lawler ignored that fact. Jerry called it out that he missed it by a mile, by the way. And when we get to the finish, Camp Cornette just blatantly interferes in the match, but that's okay, as Bob Holly takes advantage of the distraction to hit a roll-up on Billy Gunn to get the pin and the 3 count. Camp Cornette leaves laughing, and we get a slow-mo replay of the finish showing that Bob Holly is indeed still a good worker with a great-looking roll-up. Before we move along, Ryan, what did you have on this match, and also the many, many things going on in and around it?
Yeah, the amount of shit happening here, I mean, I guess we should expect it. It's a tag team match involving the tag team champs. Expect no focus to be put on it. And that's exactly what we got here. You know, from the beginning, it's nothing but a spectacle for Sonny with this giant poster, and then cutting to Bret talking about Pillman, and then Team Cornette coming down with folding chairs in hand to watch it. JR filling us in on more details about Diesel and Razor. I mean, there was just so much shit going on here that, unsurprisingly, at the beginning, I completely missed the no-namer jobber that was teaming up with Bob until I saw his singlet with the words "the pug" on it. And I realized it was the great Alex Porteau in there with Bob Holly. And I was very close to making Bob Holly the jobber of the week.
Oh.
I mean, that would be a move up from a stairway jobber like he was a couple months ago.
That is true.
I mean, Holly has really fallen far. I mean, he's teaming up with the fucking pug in a jobber tag team match against the Smoking Guns. I mean, it's sad because when Holly's in there, he looks solid. As always, he's a solid wrestler. Lands a pretty good-looking hurricanrana, and then the Guns start to beat on him, and they even land their finisher. But because of some distractions by Cornette, Holly's able to get the victory roll-up win, which is pretty much the only reason I didn't make him the jobber of the week. He won here. If he would have taken the pinfall, he might have had the honors of jobber of the week this week, but he was saved by a roll-up win there, so congratulations to Bob Holly.
Wow. Yeah, this was a total clusterfuck. Hard to pay attention to the match at all with all this stuff going on that you guys talked about. But Camp Cornette, they're a bunch of heels, right? They come out, they distract the heels to lose. Yeah, again, just confusion on, who is a heel, who's a babyface, and just making your tag team champions look like complete schmucks yet again.
Yeah. And it was kind of predictable, right? That we'd come back around to this point, because the last time we had any kind of major tag team match, that was the Smoking Guns, the New Rockers, the Body Donnas.
Yeah, the three-way fuckfest or whatever.
Yeah.
All of this stuff sort of makes me respect some of the teams that would come later a little bit more, like Hardy Boys, Edge and Christian, Dudley Boys, like seeing them bring the tag team division back after seeing this complete shit is like, man.
Out of the gutter.
Yes, I really respect those guys a lot more.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. And I can't wait to see how the new Blackjacks and the new Midnight Express and all of the other dud teams that happen in between now and then, how they stack up to some of these teams and the storytelling going on here. I tell you what, I'm really looking forward to the Headbangers coming in. Not that they were, all-time world-class athletes necessarily, but they put on a hell of a good show, so a little fucking variety in it. We're going to break to commercial here in our episode, and it's that new fall season commercial where the guy jumps out of a plane to watch WWF wrestling the whole way down to the ground. When we come back, it's to a split screen with an empty ring on one side and Gorilla Monsoon in the president's office on the other. Monsoon is here to address Jim Ross and the news of Diesel and Razor Ramon returning. And what's really going on here is that Monsoon is here to do some legal ass covering, stating clearly that individuals by the names of Kevin Nash and Scott Hall will not be present in the WWF, as they are currently under contract with a different organization. Monsoon also says that he's just looking out for the fans in case anyone feels hoodwinked by Jim Ross's news on this matter. Which, on a personal note, if you have to address the fact that people are going to feel ripped off ahead of time, you should probably just not do that thing that's going to make them feel ripped off. We'll move over now to Jerry Lawler, interviewing Jim Cornette and Vader in the ring. And now I've been reminded that Jim Cornette is going to be wrestling Jose Lothario, and I hate it. Vader was woofing around while Jim Cornette describes how Vader has been training him. And to show how far along in his training he is, Cornette is going to show us by working with a young man named Tony Williams. As they prep, we get some rare words from Vader on the mic, yelling, "Get him, Jimmy, get him!" And sure enough, they start trading arm wrenches, Tony Williams taking every opportunity to reverse Cornette. Tony Williams eventually has enough of it and starts working Cornette. Vader puts an end to that, though, and this segment fizzles out with Cornette yelling at the defeated Williams as though Williams is Jose Lothario. We'll move it along after this, but first, Ryan, what did you think of the WWF's admitting that they're pulling a bunch of bullshit here, but then also this exhibition from Jim Cornette and Tony Williams?
To start with Gorilla Monsoon, if you pay attention to his wording when he says that Kevin Nash and Scott Hall will not be showing up, I think we should probably take him at his word there. They will not be showing up. And then, for some reason, in the middle of him explaining this to us, there was a clash of some pots and pans in the background.
Yeah.
I was going to ask about, I was pretty sure it wasn't coming from my house when I was watching. I was like, what the hell was that?
I don't know. Someone was cleaning the dishes or something.
Yeah.
Tripped over a mic cable in the background there or something.
The other thing I thought kind of funny is, especially moving forward to the rest of this episode and looking back at this comment, but Gorilla Monsoon says that he will come down hard and punish anyone who makes more of these false allegations and misleads the WWF fans, but he never does at any point in this match, as JR continues to promise us that Diesel and Razor Ramon are coming back. So that was a bit of a false promise there. And then I really don't have much to say about this absolute shit show that happened in the ring. His promo on Jose Lothario was okay outside of why are we wasting more time on this? And then this workout with Tony Williams. What the fuck? Was this kid 17 years old? It looked like he doesn't have a driver's license. I don't want to say every wrestler has to be 7 foot tall and 300 pounds, but I'm not sure he broke 5 foot. He was a small guy. But the work with him and Cornette was just terrible. I mean, it is extremely clear why Cornette is not a wrestler and is a manager, and that is where he needs to stay. He does not need to be wrestling because it was piss poor. Just way, way too much time spent on this Jose Lothario and Jim Cornette bullshit.
Yeah, the Gorilla Monsoon stuff, like you said, he's careful with his wording, saying Kevin Nash and Scott Hall will not be appearing, and this is Billionaire Ted Part 2, basically.
Yeah.
Except this time it's just a desperate ratings grab because, you're getting your ass kicked by the competition. So, let's try to use that to our advantage.
And soiling the good name of JR.
I can't believe they actually went through with this, but we'll get to see that here in a couple weeks. And then the stuff with Jim Cornette, just all I could think of was if this was happening in 2022 in AEW or NXT or wherever, Jim Cornette would have a fucking fit about all of this. You would see the stupid YouTube video with the animated pictures and him fucking freaking out for 20 minutes about this and how stupid it is and offensive and what an embarrassment to the wrestling business,
My biggest thing is Cornette has no business being in the ring. He looks terrible.
He has no business being out here. I don't want to see Jim Cornette really get physical at all.
No.
Yeah, to be honest. I'd rather see him running away from guys. And not only is Jim Cornette a manager, Jim Cornette he's on the booking committee. So it's not like you need him to do this to earn his paycheck. So I don't know. It's just not necessary, but I guess we're going to have to see it.
Yeah, well, keep in mind that these decisions are being made by the same geniuses that thought Warrior University and a bunch of comic books were a good idea. A good deal worth signing on to,
Yeah.
Speaking of another one of those good deals to sign on to, let's go on now to our next match. Mark Marrow with Sable defeats Owen Hart by pinfall in 9 minutes and 26 seconds in a WWF Intercontinental Title Tournament semifinal match. Commentary spends the start of this talking over whatever Owen Hart was saying in the ring. Didn't get to catch it. Pat Patterson is going to be joining commentary. He's there to announce that he will be refereeing the tournament final on Raw next week. And within the first minute of this match, Owen Hart is a thoroughbred, while Mark Marrow is an emotional support pony. Marrow can do all the same things Owen can, but with significantly less skill and grandeur in the execution. This is all just a cluster of information once again, though. I had a hard time paying attention to the match because the constant stream of information pouring out of commentary, and then the split screen with Gorilla Monsoon, it was an overload for me. I had no idea what to give the most attention to. I was able to watch a great-looking missile dropkick from Owen Hart at one point, though, so that was good. That existed in there somewhere. Sable did an alright job of being a valet here, and, despite all the times I've shit-talked her, and I still don't regret any of that, I do try to give credit where credit is due, and I will admit here that she is getting better in her role. Not all that much, but small baby steps, just being that support person there for Marrow and reacting and acting appropriately given the scenarios that they're in. We cut to commercial and get that great movie guy voice video package featuring Mankind, highlighting his match with Shawn Michaels at the upcoming Mind Games pay-per-view. Once again, when the referee doesn't see the cast come off, or then the way that the cast is like dangling off Owen's arm for a minute, I have to wonder where the fuck is Harvey Whippleman in all of this. But, that's good, though, because Marrow has to be able to get that cast off of Owen to hit Owen with it. They probably didn't trust Marrow to work it off unless it was dangling by a thread the way it was. The referee doesn't see Marrow get that, which gives Marrow the opportunity to hit Owen with it, getting the pin and the 3 count. Oh, and for the record, the referee stands right next to the cast laying in the middle of the ring to lift Marrow's arm. But in what is hopefully some very positive foreshadowing, Marrow stomps on the cast. I'm hoping that signifies the end of what has been a dumb angle for a great wrestler. Joe, could you help me out with some of the things I might have missed here? There was just so much going on. It was just a constant barrage of information.
Yeah, I thought all of this was the shits, pretty much, which kind of sucks because I think that the mild man's style kind of meshes pretty well with Owen Hart. I think they could have had a good match had this cast stuff not happened. It was used twice right in front of the referee. It's as if nobody fucking clued that referee in on, hey, we're going to use the cast and you need to look away. So that you don't see
staring at it both times.
Staring right at it. And I can't let that go. I know it's wrestling, but my God, at least try to make it look a little bit real.
Both guys used it.
Both times, yeah. Kevin Kelly is a major kiss ass and loves saying what a maneuver as much as Vince. Jim Ross throwing temper tantrums and yelling at Gorilla Monsoon. It was hard to listen to.
Yeah.
But seeing and hearing Pat Patterson, that was nice. They're giving him credit for being the first Intercontinental Champion ever. I mean, Pat Patterson's awesome. What is there not to like about him? But outside of that, I mean, yeah, this was just not good. And really, it could have been better had it not been for the cast.
Yeah, and really more than just the cast, all of the distractions that they talk about during this match. It's the cast, it's the arguing between Gorilla Monsoon and JR over the credibility of these allegations of Diesel and Razor Ramon coming back, which has been a underlying distraction in almost every match so far tonight. But JR tries to build up a bit of a rivalry between these two, saying something started between them over in South Africa, but I mean, if you're going to try and build a feud, don't you have to at least focus on their match a little bit? Because they don't. The action with Owen is pretty solid. When Owen takes over, it always looks good. And working with Mark, Joe, I agree. I think if this match could have been given a proper focus and a clean ending, we could be completely talking differently about this match and probably would be, even with the mild man being involved, simply because of Owen. But the distractions and the cast bullshit that I agree. I hope the stomping on the cast signifies the end of this storyline with it. But man, they really made this ref look like a schmuck, and this match was forgettable.
Yeah, great word for it. And it's not just any match either. It's an IC title semifinal match, this fucking tournament. Like, this maybe would have been okay in one of the first round matches, but I would have hoped that you would have something better for the semifinals. All right, let's move it along now to the WWF World Tour in South Africa. Stone Cold was there in the jungle, along with Hunter Hearst Helmsley. I did not see the Stalker there, though.
Perfect place for him.
Yeah, I mean, you would have thought that he would be somebody that would enjoy the wildlife there and perhaps some poaching.
Do you not think that perhaps his camo was not just being effective here and you didn't see him?
True, yeah.
Well, that is a great point, but I think a big shock of bright bleach blonde hair would stand out amongst all of the greenery. I don't know. I could be wrong.
Not if he's properly stalking his game.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. He could maybe tuck it up underneath that French beret.
Or while out there, in Africa, he found a mud hole and he ran the mud through his hair. Who knows what he did?
Yeah, good call. Well, the big takeaway, though, is that Bret Hart was there, wrestling in what was, quote-unquote, possibly his last match with the WWF. And if ever there was a potential trophy for the Stalker, it would have been Bret Hart, the best there is, best there was, best there ever will be. Also the most dangerous game. But Bret is here on screen to give us a statement, and that statement will be directed at Brian Pillman, as well as Owen Hart. Pillman is a liar. Bret has never committed to being at the Philly pay-per-view. This is that commitment reference they made at the top of the show and grossly misconstrued. As for Owen, Owen's a liar too. However, the Hitman has not forgotten his fans, and for his fans, Bret needs to be honest. Bret's going to, therefore, tell us that he has a lot of commitments to his family at home. He's got commitments to some denim jeans on the set of Lonesome Dove. He just doesn't know what he's going to do. He's got commitments. Joe, I know we didn't get a lot of movement here in terms of this program, but we did get the crucial information that Bret isn't part of the build coming from Pillman and Owen. What do you think about the way that this story has taken on a twist?
First off, it's nice to see Bret Hart. You have to remind people that he's there because he is on a little bit of a break right now. So there's a lot of stuff going on TNT on the other channel right now. So you want to make people remember Bret Hart is here on our roster. Here he is wrestling in South Africa. And it's nice to hear from him too, because I kind of like this. He's calling them, Brian Pillman and Owen, a couple of liars, which is really good because Owen Hart and Brian Pillman, they come off as scumbags, and that's basically what Bret is telling us. So it's pretty good. It works.
Yeah, what Bret tells us here is kind of what they were hitting to in the first segment, where it's looking like Owen, like you said, Owen and Pillman coming off as scumbags. Like they weren't being genuine, and Bret clears that up right here, saying they are liars. The one thing that would confuse me, though, and did, was we haven't seen Bret Hart in months, and he's still telling us that we may never see him, yet he's wrestling in South Africa. Like, what's the deal here? Why don't we get any Bret Hart? I mean, I understand these are prior promises that he was already involved in, but as a normal WWF fan back in the time, I don't think you would know that, and you're probably just thinking that, like, well, if he's in South Africa, why isn't he wrestling now for us? So,
what do they have that we don't have?
Yeah. Like, what's the deal?
What's the deal with South Africa?
Yeah, I just had to imagine a father and son there in the arena in South Africa, and the father saying to the son, now take in all of this Bret Hart. There are starving fans in America.
They haven't seen Bret Hart in 6 months.
They just see his lying brother.
All right, well, we'll come away from that and move now into our final match of the night. Farouk Assad with Sonny defeats Psycho Sid by disqualification in 7 minutes and 5 seconds in a WWF Intercontinental Title Tournament semi-final match. Sonny put on some more clothes for this one, which I thought was strange. You'd think if she was going to do a wardrobe change, it would stay at least as scantily clad as whatever her previous outfit was, but she's wearing more clothes this time.
Well, the first one was basically a bra, so...
Well, yeah, this one is a little bit more of a covering. Still plenty of cleavage, though.
Oh, yeah.
We break to commercial and get that live wire commercial again, and we came back to Sid's entrance. Sid loved it, the crowd loved it, I loved it. Sid also loved the crowd chanting "Powerbomb." That kind of got a nice little reaction from him there. And this starts with both guys toe-to-toe in the ring, trying for shoulder blocks off the ropes to prove themselves. And after a nice power slam from Farouk, Jim Ross mentions that the helmet Farouk wears is controversial. I'm assuming I'm assuming he means in the sense of supposed head protection, but we all know it's controversial in that it just fucking sucks, and nobody likes it. Farouk's belly-to-back suplex on Sid looked good, and so did Farouk's hit to Sid's kidney when Sid was sitting up. We got a split screen with Ahmed Johnson, and I hate to admit it, I couldn't understand what he was saying at all. He was mumbling a lot through that, but I did catch the final threat that Ahmed was going to burn someone's ass up. Sid's rally out of the headlock was interesting, and Sid catching Farouk into a power slam was a pretty neat spot. I was entertained by that. Jerry Lawler starts talking about Mark Henry just out of nowhere, completely unprompted by any surrounding noises or information. I'm sure he was prompted by Vince McMahon screaming in his ear.
How many storylines are we going to shoehorn the king into?
Yeah, yeah. How many storylines are these poor bastards at the commentary table juggling because they've got Vince McMahon micromanaging the shit out of them from a gorilla position?
Yeah.
Say it!
Bombshell, say it.
This whole episode, I'm going to break away from my notes here for a second. This whole fucking episode is just one giant example of Vince McMahon struggling with the fact that he's not present at the commentary camera, commanding every fucking thing they say.
You're fiending for Vince to come back to commentary. Did you ever think you would think that way? 1, 2, he got him.
Only fiending for him to come back so he's not micromanaging 3 people from the backstage.
He got him. No, he didn't.
Yeah. We need a third man on commentary because you two sons of bitches can't say all the shit I'm telling you to say. Put a third man out there. God.
And sometimes
mighty.
A fourth.
You can just imagine it, can't you? Him backstage just screaming at both.
Actually, yeah. For 80% of the shit they say, yes, I can hear Vince telling them.
In the middle of every match, screaming to JR, talk about Diesel and Razor Ramon again.
Lawler, don't forget to put over Henry, you bastard. And that point where Jerry Lawler starts talking about Mark Henry, that's pretty much the way that commentary starts ignoring the match. They were focusing on it before. Now they are talking about as many things as they possibly can as they break to commercial again. Sid hits the choke slam once we come back, and then Sonny comes in for the distraction. And then things get fucky. Farouk hits Sid with the chair, leaves the chair in the ring, which the ref doesn't see going into the pin. Then Sid kicks out, picks up the chair, uses it. This time the ref sees it, and Sid draws the DQ victory for Farouk. The end result here, Mark Marrow and Farouk will be battling for the Intercontinental Championship on next Monday Night Raw. Here's hoping that Farouk destroys more than one of Marrow's kidneys. We're going to cut to The Undertaker for his word on Goldust immediately after that. And The Undertaker cuts a promo and clarifies his strategy there. And it is as you guys called it. The Undertaker is working his way back up to Mankind. But he also drops a pretty interesting tidbit that this is going to be the debut of the new Undertaker, which I am very excited to see that, what that ends up looking like. And we're going to touch on the match card for the Mind Games pay-per-view to close things out. Let's not forget that match that I just mentioned, the final curtain match between The Undertaker and Goldust, and that's what it's being called, the final curtain match. The only stipulation that they give us here is that you must win by pinfall. which is an odd choice. I mean, I get it. You can't do a DQ. You can't do a count out, all of that, but still just feels a little underwhelming, I guess. Mark Henry and Jerry Lawler will be having their match. I'm not sure what to think of that, to be honest. I mean, if anybody can get a good match out of somebody that's green, it's probably going to be Jerry Lawler. Mark Henry is a great athlete, so I'm trying to be optimistic about that. The tag team titles will be on the line when the Smoking Guns defend against Camp Cornette. Heel versus heel. That'll be fantastic, I'm sure. Jose Lothario and Jim Cornette will be going at it. And finally, Shawn Michaels will be going up against Mankind. And we cut to Mankind and Paul Bearer in what appears to be some kind of boiler room where Paul cuts a great promo for us before passing it on over to Mankind. Mankind wonders if having the title will make him a sexy boy too. I was genuinely surprised at the end of this episode to see them actually devote time trying to get people to buy the pay-per-view. This is something that we've talked about in the past few go-home shows. This is a drastic 180 from the most recent strategies for their go-home Raws. Ryan, what did you think of our final match and the way that this go-home episode of Raw ended?
You know, it started off with these two big guys, staring each other down, and then they exchange some big shoulders with each other, but neither one of them really looked especially powerful. They were both kind of weak shoulder blocks. I don't know what the deal was with that, but that changed with Farouk and his power slam on Sid, which did look great. And so did Sid. Sid ended up coming back with a big boot. A little bit later, Farouk comes off the top rope and Sid catches Farouk in a power slam that also looks pretty good. And then, the fuckery starts where commentary just starts to ignore the match, just like it did with the other Intercontinental Tournament Championship match bullshit. They just forget about that this is supposed to be anything important and just start talking about other shit. We go to Ahmed Johnson. Tough to hear him over commentary and the ring and arena noise. And then when we do come back to Farouk, he's starting to beat on Sid's kidneys as well. So I guess that's his specialty, is that he goes after people's kidneys. But the way it ended, I was not a big fan. This distraction with the ref and then the chair to Sid and then Sid. I guess my main problem was Sid did not look like he actually swung the chair once at Farouk. They were some of the weakest looking chair hits I think I've ever seen, which is a shame because some of the other work that they were doing in this match looked pretty solid. But I thought the ending was pretty lackluster, especially for a tournament ending for the Intercontinental belt. So I thought this match could have been better, much like many of the other matches that we got tonight. To go to the Undertaker's promo on Goldust, I thought this was a really good promo, and the first that we've seen of solo Undertaker. He does bring up the fact that he's basically working his way through the list of mini-bosses to work his way back to Mankind and Paul Bearer. But one thing I did want to point out, Bartlett, is you said that the Undertaker says that he's going to debut the new Undertaker, but he used a different word to incorporate Goldust's love of movies. He said, "I'm going to premiere the new Undertaker."
Yes.
I thought that was very clever of him. And then they set up all of our shit about the upcoming Mind Games. We see a pretty funny graphic that they're using for Mind Games. It's a computer animated skull with Mankind's mask on it that they keep on showing. That was kind of funny and really, really brought you back to the 90s on how shitty this computer animation looked. And then a really good promo from Mankind and Paul Bearer. Paul Bearer, by God, is he sweating in this boiler room.
Oh, man.
From head to toe, he is drenched. Mankind cuts a great promo too, and then they zoom in on that mangled ear. That was all good shit, pal.
Yeah, the Farouk versus Psycho Sid match was the other semifinal match for the Intercontinental Championship tournament, and not a clean finish in either of those matches. So that's a little disappointing. Again, we have a referee distraction tonight that was absolutely horrible. It was just Sonny standing on the apron, not doing anything really.
Yep.
So again, just kind of a lazy way to get to that final match, which is going to be on Raw and not the pay-per-view, which I thought was strange.
Yeah, that was a shocker.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm just are you guys excited for this Intercontinental Championship match? I'm not really.
It doesn't even feel like we're really at the end of it. It feels like there should be more matches.
Yeah, and it doesn't have anything to do with who's in it either. It's just I just think they set it up pretty poorly when they had some time to do this.
This could have been something special, and they squandered it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of disappointing. The Undertaker interview, I think we've learned over the years that some of the best wrestlers are the ones who are able to kind of reinvent themselves a little bit, and the Undertaker was always great at doing that. And I'm curious to see what he's talking about when he says he's going to premiere the new Undertaker. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we're going to see the new entrance with the Druids, if that's what we're going to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's possible. I mean, again, he's one of those guys. He always reinvented himself and it was always successful. So It's going to be good. The preview for Mind Games, it was just kind of thrown in there. I don't know. When I see this, I'm just kind of disappointed in the lack of build-up with Shawn Michaels and Mankind. I mean, I know we're going to get a great match, but we could have had so much good shit leading up to it and maybe got a series of matches. What did we get? We had a mandible claw put on Shawn Michaels before SummerSlam.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And no physical contact since then between these two.
No.
So that's a little disappointing. And that's really all I could think about when they're running through these matches. And also, what the fuck is a final curtain match? Outside of that, I mean, am I excited for it? Yes, I'm excited to watch that match. But I feel like it's kind of a missed opportunity a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing to get you excited about the match was the people involved. They didn't do anything extra to make it special.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it kind of displays the weakness in Shawn Michaels' first run here as champion. There's not a lot of David versus Goliath, which really should have been used because, Shawn is that smaller athletic type going up against these deranged monsters like Mankind and Vader.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's kind of just showing that the weakness there a little bit.
Yeah.
I think another thing that maybe we're not getting that starts to happen very soon is that Raw typically, at least in the near future, the entire episodes kind of revolve around the champ and trying to set up his story, at least at some point during almost every Raw, you have the champ involved in some type of storyline. And that just isn't happening right now.
Yeah.
It's
right.
Sometimes we completely forget about him and we don't see him for weeks at a time. And not just Shawn Michaels, other champs the same way, but that's something that will change very soon.
I almost wonder if Shawn Michaels is, and I'm sure Vince McMahon would have an absolute fucking orgasm hearing me say this. I wonder if this is maybe just Shawn Michaels falling victim to the circumstances. Because, I mean, they've, as we talked about earlier, the WWF is getting beaten right now. And they're kind of, and this episode is kind of an example of the strategy, which is throw a bunch of shit at the wall and see what sticks. And unfortunately, whenever you're throwing all of that shit at the wall, a little nugget of that shit is Shawn Michaels and his program. But, think about all of the times throughout this episode that we've listened to Gorilla Monsoon or Jim Ross talk about fucking Razor Ramon and Diesel.
Yeah.
Those were all instances where they could have been crafting some kind of story to get us ready for this.
And to, briefly talk about this from like a marketing point of view, you spent this entire hour reminding people of WCW.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Absolutely right. Something that, Joe, you made me think about whenever you were talking earlier about the Intercontinental Championship, the tournament here. Maybe you can correct me and one of you guys can help me out with some names since then that I might just be forgetting in the moment. But I don't think I've given a shit about the Intercontinental title since the last ladder match. Who's had it? Gold Dust? I mean,
I think it was nice.
Good.
I think it was nice to see Ahmed Johnson get it, just because, he's the new guy coming in that they're building up.
And I enjoyed Goldust's run with it too. I didn't think that was terrible.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's just that I don't necessarily care, though. I mean, I don't know.
Well, it's not going to get any better. So,
yeah, that's true.
Sorry to break the news to you.
I'm reserving all of my give a shit for the European title when that one comes back.
Yeah.
That's what I'm telling myself. All right, gentlemen, the show is over, so let's take it on over now to highlights and lowlights. Ryan, why don't you go first, please?
For a go-home show, there was really nothing that stuck out as a highlight. I mean, at the very end, some of these promos with The Undertaker and Mankind and Paul Bearer, they weren't bad, but there were no run-ins, no actual confrontations to set up these big matches. So I think maybe my first time ever, I am going with no highlight.
Wow.
Yeah, I couldn't pick one. And my low light goes hand in hand with this, since this was a go-home show and everything was fairly piss poor. This entire show was the low light.
Wow. God damn.
Well, this is not first for me. I also don't have a highlight here.
Oh, my goodness.
I'll tell you what the highlight is. Maybe I do have a highlight. Maybe and it's nothing against wheeling. But I'm glad we're done with this run of wheeling shows with Kevin Kelly and Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler on commentary. And not that I love Vince as a commentator, but it feels different. Doesn't it kind of have like a weird feeling to it? I don't really like it. I'm glad we're done with this run of wheeling shows.
Not going to see that Slash jersey anymore.
The specific low light I want to point out is like we've mentioned, this constant talk of Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, and Razor and Diesel, whatever they want to call them, is just it's really terrible.
Yeah, you've made some pretty good points there, especially with commentary. And I never thought I'd be saying this about Jim Ross and Kevin Kelly, but it feels forced, and it feels like it's being forced by fucking Vince McMahon screaming in their ears. They're not being allowed to use their own chemistry. They're not being allowed to call things the way they want to call them.
It's like it feels like an audition.
Yeah. My highlights and lowlights, no shock here. A lot to pick from in terms of lowlights, but I ended up going with the Sultan versus Jake Roberts just because, once again, the absolute definition of drizzling shits. And my highlights, I did have a highlight here, and I went with the way that they actually treated this like a go-home show, kind of, for the most part. They actually had video packages getting us ready for things. And, at certain points, the episode felt like it was more about getting people to tune into Raw next week rather than buy the pay-per-view. But at least they threw that video package in at the end to maybe increase the buy rate a little bit. So that's it for me. Joseph, do you have any contemporary wrestling news from on and around September 16th, 1996 for us?
Yeah, just to start things off, to get you guys caught up on what's going on over at WCW. The Cruiserweight division is fully up and running. Rey Mysterio Jr. is the current Cruiserweight champion. And newcomers like Chris Jericho, Juventud Guerrera, Billy Kidman, and Psychosis have made their debuts recently. So lots of great cruiserweight wrestling going on over there.
It's a shame they don't have the talent that the Intercontinental Tournament has.
Yeah. Yeah, the Intercontinental Tournament could use some Hoovy juice for sure. As far as the NWO, Hulk Hogan beat the Giant at Hog Wild for the WCW Championship and spray painted the letters NWO on the belt. Just a few weeks later, the NWO has gained a 4th and 5th member. We know that it's no surprise that Ted DiBiase was behind it all along, becoming the 4th member, and the Giant became the 5th member.
I wonder who member 6 will be.
Yeah, it's funny you ask, Ryan, because on September 16th, the same night as this episode of Raw, Sean Waltman was sitting in the crowd on
that episode
of Nitro and was named the 6th member of the NWO. So WCW is, I mean, they're running hard right now. They've got the NWO in full action and the cruiserweights.
Tough to imagine they could compete with this Raw.
Well, speaking of competing with this Raw, WCW won the Monday Night ratings on September 16th by its largest margin to date. They had a 3.6 rating to Raw's 2.1 rating, and that's for a go-home show, so...
I almost tuned into it in the middle of watching this.
Yeah. A little bit of sad news here. Juanita Wright. I don't know if you guys know who that is. That is the name of Sapphire, the manager of Dusty Rhodes. She passed away in September of 1996 at the age of 61 due to a heart attack. So rest in peace, Sapphire. The Intercontinental Championship title match was going to be on the pay-per-view, apparently, but it was moved to the live Monday Night Raw on September 23rd.
But it was deemed not important.
Well, here's some good news. I don't know if they told us this, but supposedly Pat Patterson will be the referee during that match.
I do think they brought that up.
They did tell us that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, they did.
So that's something to look forward to, I guess.
Yeah. And was this the first we've seen of Pat Patterson? I don't think we've seen him before.
I mean, I don't think they've actually acknowledged him before. We saw him come out when Farouk attacked Ahmed, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Undertaker, we talked last week, he had a little problem with a staph infection, but he was back in action at house shows this weekend, so he's back. Another guy who was injured is Chris Candido. Dave Meltzer is reporting that he will be back as a heel with a new gimmick maybe around December. We'll see what happens there. Not sure about that, but that is all this week.
All right, Joseph. Thank you, sir. Very illuminating as always. And that's it, folks. We are done with this one. I want to thank you again for joining us. If you like what we're doing here and want to connect with us, you can email us at WRASSLINRAW. Just add @gmail.com to the end of that to submit questions or comments. Check us out on social media and on every podcast subscription platform. While you're there, don't forget to follow and subscribe to get every episode of Wrasslin Raw coming to you every week. Give us a 5-star review and let your friends know how much cooler they would be if they became Rawheads like you and me. Next week on Wrasslin Raw, we're going to be taking a look at In Your House 10 Mind Games, with matches featuring Justin Hawk Bradshaw, Jose Lothario, and many more. So, for Joe and Ryan, I'm Jason, and this has been Wrasslin Raw.